And good morning, everyone. Happy Monday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Hope you had an absolutely fantastic weekend. I was out of state, uh, went to Missouri, and had a really, really wonderful time. Unfortunately, my wife didn't get to go; she wasn't feeling well. But anyway, had a really, really good time. Very enjoyable, and I was, to be honest about it, after the first day, I was wondering why I was there. But oh, I felt terrible. Geez, oh my goodness gracious, I felt terrible. But nonetheless, weather was hot, all this kind of stuff. But made it up there, made it back, and just really, really had a good time. I was extremely pressed for time, and might have been best for me not to go, but it's something that I do. All right. Now then, speaking of being out of state, this week I will have videos only Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. All right, because I'm actually leaving on Wednesday and traveling to Jonesboro, Arkansas, to speak at a conference there, the Arkansas Eschatology Conference. And boy, I got to tell you, I'm really, really excited about this. It's been my privilege to get insights into some lessons that some of the other speakers are going to give. Mike Sullivan, of course, and boy, oh boy, he's done some fantastic research. And Robert Cruikshank, my good friend, likewise. And as I've mentioned to you before, this will be my very first seminar to speak at since COVID hit. And that's been a while. And I've been very reluctant, still am, to get on an airplane. I'm not doing that right now, especially with the resurgence of COVID. We've got that going on here locally in our community, and I've heard it's in the nation. But, pardon me, but my wife and I will be driving, and, on that note, it's really, really, really good to have good neighbors and to have good friends. We've got somebody that's taking care of our animals, taking care of all of our household responsibilities, to say. And it's just really good to have people who have the time that can dedicate to doing that for us as a favor. And so we really, really appreciate that. So anyway, Monday through Wednesday is all the videos that I will be producing this week. Okay, with that said, don't forget, please take advantage of this month's, that's August 2024, U.S. orders only, two-book special. Who is this Babylon? And these are the days in which all things must be fulfilled. Both of these books will provide you a wealth of information. We have people argue all the time, well, who is Babylon? In Revelation, was no other city other than Old Covenant Jerusalem. It wasn't some composite city conjured up in somebody's wild imagination. No other city in history had ever done what the book of Revelation says Babylon had done. And when you talk about the prophecies found in the book of Revelation, guess what? You've got Jesus saying in Luke chapter 21 and verse 22 that the events of the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70 would be the time in which all things written would be fulfilled. Well, if all things written would be fulfilled in the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70, what does that mean? It means Revelation would be fulfilled by AD 70. Unless you can prove that, no. Revelation's got some different stuff in it. Okay? But if you order these two books separately, all right, paid shipping separately, it costs you $50. Rest of this month, August 2024, U.S. orders only, total delivered price is $30. So do yourself a huge favor, purchase the special, go to my website, donkpreston.com or bibleprophecy.com. Beautiful banner right up at the very top. Just click on it, order the books. I can assure you, you'll be really, really glad you did. Okay, got to get into it. Here we are. And we are continuing our study of Israel's feast days and how they relate to eschatology. Now, this particular lesson could either go really, 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 really long or somewhat brief. I'm going to try to keep it brief. We very often speak of the typology of the Old Covenant feast days. And there's no question whatsoever about it. Paul, in writing Colossians chapter 2, 16 and 17, addressed the Gentile Christians, and he said, "Let no man judge you in respect of new moons, feast days, and Sabbaths, which are," and it's in the present tense, "a shadow of the good things about to come." So when Paul wrote, a couple of things are apparent. Number one, he said those feast days were still present active indicative when he wrote in 62 AD. They were still shadows. Now look, folks, it's really amazing to me, the power of tradition, the power of presuppositions is incredible. So just lately on YouTube, I've had some people tell me, well, I know that it's in the present tense, just like Hebrews chapter 10, 1 and 2. Now the law having a shadow of good things that are about to come. And so these individuals knowing and realizing that if we honor the present active indicatives in the text, it destroys the idea that the law was removed at the cross. Totally destroys it. And so what do? They say, well, I am convinced that even though the present active indicative is being used, it's not being used in its normal way. The way it's being used here is the writer is projecting himself back under the law as if the law were still present active indicative, valid and binding, was still, when he wrote, a shadow of the good things that had not yet come. So in reality, it is being argued, you see, all of those good things had already come. Well, if that's true, then the final 3 feast days of Israel's festal calendar had already been fulfilled. That means the judgment, the parousia, and the resurrection had already been fulfilled. And people say, oh, no, those hadn't been fulfilled. Oh, then they were still types and shadows when Paul wrote Colossians and when Hebrews was written. You can't have it both ways, ladies and gentlemen. You can't say that all of the good things found and foreshadowed and typified in the feasts, you cannot say all the good things had already come without demanding, once again, the judgment, the parousia, resurrection had already happened. Because those 3 feast days, those final 3 feast days, foreshadowed, typified those very eschatological realities. All right? So it's more than revealing when people have to resort to changing the Greek text in order to maintain their eschatology. They have to resort to saying, well, and by the way, without any proof whatsoever, with no contextual or textual indication in these texts of Colossians and Hebrews, not one single bit of information that lends us to understand, well, the writers here are writing as if the law was still a shadow of good things to come, when in reality it wasn't. Where does it say it? Where does it indicate it? Well, some appeal is made to Hebrews chapter 9 and verse 11. There is a variant, and we are told that Christ has become a high priest over the good things that have come. That's the variant. In a majority of Greek texts, it is Christ has become a high priest serving over the good things about to come. Now, one could make the argument, ladies and gentlemen, and this is true of the first 4 feast days especially. The one could argue, well, the writer of Hebrews is saying that the good things had already begun to arrive. That was true of the first 4 feast days. But it was not true of the final 3 feast days. What those final 3 feast days symbolized, foreshadowed, as I've already pointed out, had not yet come to fruition when these epistles were written. So even if a person wanted to rely on this textual variant, Christ became a high priest over the good things that have come, okay, that's fine. Then what you have is an already of those good things that have come, but a not yet, because in chapter 10, verse 1, the law having, present active indicative, a shadow of the good things about to come. But when I pointed this out, that you could say, yes, some things, good things had already come, but the rest of them were not yet there, these individuals basically just go ballistic. And they tell me I can't argue like that. Well, of course I can. I just did. So I hope you get the point here of, number one, how important it is of realizing that we can honor the Greek text concerning the feast days. They were not yet fulfilled. They were still typological. They were still foreshadowings of that which had not yet come. We do not have to resort to rejecting or altering, or to use the terminology of Scott McKnight in his commentary on Colossians, of saying, well, the Greek tenses here are disturbing. They're difficult, and scholars, in order to escape the force of the present active indicative, have, quote, reimagined the Greek tenses. You know what he means by that, don't you? He means by that they've altered the Greek text and said, we can't allow it to read in the present active, so we will change it. Folks, that's not exegesis, that's eisegesis. Okay, so we have Yom Kippur, one of the final three eschatological feast days, and it was a shadow of the good things that were about to come. Part of that feast day, and I'm introducing what I'm going to talk about tomorrow, and I hope that you see why I've spent my time here this morning. This is more introduction for tomorrow than it is anything else. But I want you to realize how important it is to see that the New Testament writers are establishing, they are conveying the reality that the final three feast days had not yet been fulfilled. But they were still types and shadows. So tomorrow, what we're going to look at is, I've already given a real brief introduction. We're going to look at the scapegoat. Now, I'm pretty convinced there's some of you out there, especially on YouTube, that may have some better understanding of the scapegoat than I do. I have always found this to be an absolutely fascinating subject. There's some elements of it that I still am not 100% settled on. I kind of go here and I kind of go there. I believe I've got evidence for this and I believe I've got evidence for that. Okay, but tomorrow I'm going to show you that there's some elements of Yom Kippur and the scapegoat that were not necessarily typological. And you may be going, well, wait a minute, Preston, you just talked to us a moment ago about the feast days being typological when the writer wrote. Yes, that is exactly right. However, Hebrews especially makes it clear that there are certain elements of Yom Kippur and the scapegoat that were not typological. Well, how can that be if the feast day is typological? It means that the New Testament writers, not us, but the New Testament writers, had the inspired and divine authority for saying, Okay, this is what they did on the Day of Atonement. This is part of the process of even the scapegoat. That's not a shadow because that's not fulfilled. Christ did not do that. All right? So be sure to join me on the flip side, and I'll see you there.